All right, guys, it's true crime time again. We hope you've had a great week so far. And if not, we hope that this brings a little dark joy to you.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Taylor.
And this is Pure Malice. Santa Claus is coming to town, oh yeah.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
Woo! It's Christmas time, guys.
Yep. So if you have not guessed by now, we have another Christmas-themed episode for you.
That's right.
And this one is a two-parter.
Woo-hoo.
So, just a quick reminder that if you like the show and you want us to keep giving you more, make sure to follow us on Spotify. Help us grow by following our Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, which we have, by the way.
That's right.
And our YouTube channel, which I am now a subscriber. Yep. Figured it out, y'all.
Go subscribe.
We also wanted to remind you that while we bring humor and personality to our show, we always want to maintain the utmost respect for the victims and their families.
Absolutely.
So, true crime, it's real life. Behind every case is a story of real people who deserve dignity and to be remembered. So,
right.
Turn it up, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
Woo. Trigger warning, this episode contains discussion of substance abuse and suicide.
So the case that we will be covering today is one of those cases that just burrows into your brain and sets up camp.
It does.
It's creepy, it's mysterious, but it's also incredibly sad. So we're talking about two people who spent their lives building something remarkable, helping others, and making a genuine difference in the world. And their story ends in the most shocking way imaginable.
It's pretty rough, guys. So today we are diving into the Billionaire Murders, the unsolved case of Barry and Honey Sherman, who were found dead in their Toronto mansion in December of 2017. This case has everything. It has wealth, philanthropy, family drama, conspiracy theories, and a police investigation that's been criticized from every possible angle. Barry Sherman was actually one of the richest people in Canada. He built a pharmaceutical empire. What?
Listen, y'all, I'm so sorry about this. I'm going to start it off early.
What?
Canada. It's the top hat of America. I mean, they're cool. They're just second. So are Canadians. Canada, come on.
So he built a pharmaceutical empire called Apotex that became one of the largest generic drug manufacturers in the world. And he was worth an estimated $3 to $5 billion when he died. Canadian dollars.
Which I'm pretty sure is worth more than United States dollars.
Less.
Oh.
Not significantly less, but less.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So,
now, I will say Canada has the healthcare figured out.
Do they?
Well, one of my old coaches, her husband, is from Canada. And they took a trip to see his family when she was like 8 months pregnant, and she ended up delivering early. And up there, from my understanding, they get like actual paternity leave. Like the benefits are just better, especially for having babies, maternal stuff. She said the coolest thing about it was when she actually delivered before they left the hospital, they have this room that they invite new moms to, and they just stock you full of diapers, wipes, blankets, car seats, whatever you need, you have access to it. Whether you have insurance or not, they're making sure that you're set up to go.
That's really awesome.
Just her experience, and maybe it was just the area she was at, but it sounded like it had something to do with how their healthcare is set up. So
that's awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and take you through what we know about December 13th, which was the last day that Barry and Honey were last seen alive.
Let's do it.
So they started their day off with their personal trainer, Denise Gold, coming over to their house. Taylor's face.
I'm bound personal trainer, y'all.
Me too. I walk my ass to that refrigerator, me.
She don't know if she wants to be a snack or have a snack.
Oh, no, that's right. Speaking of snacks, you know Nutella, right? Well, instead of Nutella, we buy this product called Good Good, and it's like a healthier version of Nutella. It doesn't have near as much sugar.
Yeah, Sissy said it wasn't as good as Nutella.
I know, because it's not as much sugar, but it's just as good, I swear. I discovered that they have a white chocolate one, and it is so good. We got 4 jars.
I bet it is.
It's delicious and you should try it. So they started their day off with their personal trainer, Denise Gold, coming to their home. She did a session with Barry, which ended around 9:30 a.m. And then she started her session with Honey, which ran about 2 hours long. When Barry finished his session, he got ready for work and he left the house around 10 a.m. and headed to his office at Apotex to handle his usual business matters. Work was slow that day for Barry, but for Honey, back at home, things were much busier. They apparently had real estate agents, repairmen, and some other people coming through to get their house ready to sell. So it was currently on the market.
Oh, okay.
They were just kind of doing some repairs ahead of time before they had a buyer come in, you know?
Yeah. Smart.
Very smart. So Honey also attended a fundraiser earlier that day at the Baycrest Foundation, which was one of many charitable organizations that she supported. And then around 5 o'clock, Honey went to the Apotex building because the couple had a meeting with their architect, which was a really big deal for them. And the reason that this was such a big deal for them is because Honey and Barry Sherman were extremely generous with their money. They donated tens of millions of dollars to charities. And on top of that, Honey donated millions of dollars of her own money to other charities. They often would help friends, family, anyone in need. They were very, very generous. And while they did a lot for others, they didn't spend much money on themselves. They were very frugal. So them getting to build a brand new house was a big deal.
Well, it sounds like she donated a lot of her own personal time to these charitable.
Yes, she was on so many boards. She spent a lot of time with charities, yes. So their meeting with the architect finished around 6:15 p.m. and Barry said goodbye to everybody and he stayed at the office, which was not unusual. He was known to stay late and Honey left the office and set out on some errands. So she stopped at the Baby Village Shopping Center on her way home to get some Hanukkah presents for her grandchildren. And then she stopped at a CIBC branch, which was a bank, obviously, to get some money out. And then she headed home. So she would have arrived home somewhere around 8 p.m. Barry was seen on CCTV footage leaving the Apotex building around 8:30 p.m., which would have put him arriving home somewhere around 9 p.m. So they were both expected at various events and meetings in the coming days. The next day, December 14th, Barry was supposed to attend a board meeting at Apotex. Whenever he didn't show up and didn't call to let anyone know, people at the company started to wonder because this was highly unusual for him. He was very much a workaholic. Barry was meticulous about his schedule and his commitments, and Honey also had plans to meet with friends and had commitments with various charitable organizations as well. And she also did not show up to any of her commitments and did not respond to calls or messages. And again, people took notice. Their children tried reaching them by phone throughout the day on the 14th, but all of the calls continued to go unanswered. And this brings us to December 15th.
Okay.
So on December 15th, somewhere around 8:30 a.m., a housekeeper and a gardener arrived at the home of Barry and Honey Sherman. The housekeeper noticed right away that a few things were off. One was that it was snowing that day, and Honey's car was parked in the driveway, but there were no fresh tire marks, no footsteps around the car, nothing that would indicate that she had used the car that day.
Oh, and it was out, which I'm assuming it would normally be put in or something.
Well, so she was known to park in the driveway, but she was also known to be busy. Have a busy life. She would have already been out to the car a couple of times, maybe even done a couple of things, you know, which also meant that Honey was at home.
Yeah.
So number 2 is she noticed that the newspaper was still in the driveway. This was odd to her because any other day that she arrived at the Shermans, the newspaper was already picked up because Barry, that was the very first thing he did in the mornings. He would go outside, get the newspaper, deactivate the security alarm so she could get into the home to do her job.
Yeah.
And 3, usually by the time she got there, Honey was already up and going for the day. She was usually in the kitchen making tea because that's how she started her day off. She would make a pot of tea and sit and drink it. So in her head, she's thinking, well, maybe they actually slept in this morning, you know?
Yeah.
So whenever she entered the home, she noticed that the security system had been deactivated, but there was no sign of Barry or Honey inside of the home. So she makes her way through the house, going room to room, and still no sign of either of them until she heard a phone ring. So she follows the sound of the phone ringing until she found it in a powder room located on the main floor of the home. This was also very strange to the housekeeper because Honey never used that powder room. So there were all of these strange little things that stood out to her and gave her, you know, like that uneasy feeling, but nothing that seemed like it was a big enough deal to call the authorities. So she continues on completing her duties around the home, and around 10 a.m., their real estate agent, who was named Elise Stern, arrives at the property to meet another agent and his two buyers to show them the home. And just real quick, guys, so their home at 50 Old Colony Road in North York, Toronto, was a large property in an upscale neighborhood. It was about 12,000 square foot, had 2 upper levels and a basement. Yeah, it was massive. Yeah.
I can barely keep like a 2,000 square foot home.
Hence why she had the housekeeper and the gardener. That's a lot to keep up with for sure.
There'd be rooms I've never seen in my own house.
Oh, absolutely there would be. What would you even do with all of them?
I feel like you'd have to rotate, like, each week I'm going to see another part of my house.
Right? Designate certain days for certain rooms.
Yeah. To each
They've
their
got,
own.
yeah, exactly. They've got the money. This is what they want. And again, they didn't do a whole lot for themselves. So
Yeah.
it had 2 upper levels and a basement. It had 6 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, a couple of pools, including an indoor pool, a tennis court, and underground parking that could fit up to 6 vehicles. Their house was listed for sale around $7 million.
I mean, I feel like that is necessary.
The underground parking?
Oh, yeah.
I would totally have underground parking.
I would
Was
have an
rich.
indoor and outdoor pool. I know I would also have indoor batting cage large enough to like have a fielding area.
Yeah, it would definitely have some things.
Well, and I may have an obstacle course. And you know the one thing I wanted ever since I was a child?
What?
Trampoline room.
Oh, that would be so fun. That would be a good time.
I feel like there'd be lots of broken bones.
Maybe. That might not be such a great idea then.
I'd still do it.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying have fun at the ER.
I know a nurse practitioner.
All right. So the Shermans did not know about this showing because even though Elise had been trying to get in touch with them,
She couldn't get it.
she could not get a hold of them. So she decided to go ahead and do the showing anyway. She let herself into the home using the key from the lockbox and proceeded to show the agent and his 2 clients the home. Eventually, she gets to the basement and specifically, she gets to the indoor pool room. So she opens the door, turns on the lights, and sees from a distance that Honey and Barry are both in the pool room. But she notices right away that something is off. Something is really, really strange. And she actually described it as, quote, thinking they were doing some sort of weird yoga thing. The clients that were looking at the home also saw this, and they described it as, quote, thinking it was some bizarre leftover Halloween display or like it was some sick prank. So Elise got the clients out of the room immediately. She apologized and suggested that they cut their showing short and they could arrange another time for them to see the pool room. So the clients agreed because after seeing what they had just seen, they were kind of eager to get out of the house and said that they were feeling uneasy about whatever it was that they just saw. So once the clients left, Elise goes back into the home and in her mind, she's walking through what she just saw and she's trying to make sense of it. So she ends up going to Nellie, which was the housekeeper's name. So she goes up to Nellie and she asked her to go down to the basement and investigate what's going on in the pool room because she was sure that she had just seen them in the basement and that something had happened. So Nellie, who had already, Nobody wants to go.
Every time you say Nelly, I'm like,
Nelly,
I see you,
and
love you, and I
love you.
I do.
Need you no matter what I do. All I
Anyway.
think about is you. Okay.
I went to a Nelly concert not too long ago.
And that was such a good time. Highly suggested.
It was a good one. Yeah, cool little shakers.
We did. So Nellie, who had already noticed several things out of the norm that morning, said, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not going down there. Something weird is going on. I'm not going. So the gardener ends up being the person to go down to the basement and check it out.
Always the gardeners.
That was a thought of mine too. Like, man, the gardener?
Always.
Mm-hmm.
They're always doing something sketchy. They're always in the background. But I feel like that's a job I don't want to ever have to have. Like,
So the gardener ends up being the person to go on down and check it out. So whenever she comes back upstairs, she's in shock. She tells them that they're dead. And as she's trying to speak, she's actually having a hard time even getting words out to describe to them what she saw.
yeah.
She basically tells them, just call the police. Now call the police. So Elise, the real estate agent, decides to call Mary, Honey's sister, first and tell her what's going on. And then Mary says, you need to call the police now.
I don't get it. I don't understand why everybody tries to call somebody first. And honestly, like, good job, Mary. Good job, Mary, in saying call the police now.
Yep.
Because a lot of times they're like, oh, don't do anything until I get here.
I agree with you. It is crazy. Why is that not just an automatic thought? Like,
Like, just call the
call the police. Get them over there.
Yeah.
Because what if there's still a pulse? What if there's still a chance that they could have
I'm like,
been brought back, you know?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Always the gardener, and they always call somebody else first. These people.
So it wasn't until almost a full hour and a half after the bodies were discovered that the Toronto police received the call at 11:44 a.m. reporting that Honey and Barry were dead. Within a minute of receiving the call, police along with paramedics and firefighters arrive at the home and find Barry and Honey Sherman dead in their pool room. The way that they were found is beyond bizarre to me. So they were basically found in seated positions with their legs stretched out in front of them. Barry had his right leg crossed over his left leg, but Honey's legs were not crossed. They were just stretched out.
Okay.
Both of their coats had been pulled down, like right below their shoulders, just kind of resting there. And their arms were down by their sides. Barry still had his glasses on. But the most shocking part of this is that they both had men's leather belts fastened around their necks, with the other side of the belt looped around the metal railing of their pool. So the belts were sort of like hoisting them upwards so that their top halves of the body were still upright and keeping them in that seated position. Both of their mouths were open and had fully turned purple at this point. Honey had a bruise and dried blood on her face. Barry's face was completely untouched. There was also blood on Honey's jacket, which appeared to come from a spot on the pool deck. And there was also blood on Barry's right pant leg near the ankle. So by the time that the police arrived, rigor mortis had already set in. So paramedics knew that they had been dead for at least 24 hours, if not more. So obviously this was already a very odd scene, but things got a little bit stranger whenever one of the first responders noticed the eerie way that their bodies had been found had a strong resemblance to a piece of art that they had in their home. So they had these life-size statues that were made of just different materials. A lot of people called it rubbish material, so just random things. And it was in their basement media room. And Barry and Honey had been posed exactly like these statues. Legs, hands, all of it.
Note to self: if I ever get rich, do not buy artwork.
Just don't buy full-size statues and you'll be okay.
I'm not even gonna find pictures of people.
Well, okay.
Sculptures, nothing.
I love art. I would definitely have tons of art.
Okay, well, you can also be murdered and post like your artwork.
Well, hopefully not.
So, not either, but.
So the scene was cordoned off and the investigation began immediately. And one of the first things that investigators looked into, due to the Shermans' wealth and status, was the possibility of a burglary gone wrong. And that makes sense. One, they were billionaires. Two, they lived in a very wealthy area of Toronto in a massive house. And shockingly, I don't know why this shocked me so much, but it did, there were a lot of break-ins in their area. And actually, Barry and Honey had previously had their own home broken into. And whenever it happened, the robbers actually broke in through one of their skylights. So these were like committed, skilled robbers.
Interesting. I mean, it doesn't surprise me if you are tracking people, if you're
keeping
a
up
master
with them.
criminal, like
Yeah.
you're keeping up with them. You know, there's only 2 people and a few staff members in this 12,000 square foot home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could be in one area and nobody ever know you were there.
Right, absolutely, you could.
That's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't shock me that people would try it.
I don't know. In my head, I'm like, they're billionaires. They probably have all kinds of security.
You would think.
You would think. So there were 160 reported break-ins by the police in the surrounding area in the last year. But there were no reports of violence in a single one of those break-in incidents.
Yeah.
So back at the scene, there were no signs of forced entry into the home, but there was one window that had been left open in order to air out a recently painted room. And one of the doors had also been left unlocked. Now, there was no CCTV footage from inside the house that could be analyzed because they did not have cameras, other than one that was located inside of the pool room. But it wasn't plugged in at the time because basically they only used it if their grandchildren were swimming in the pool downstairs and they were upstairs. That's pretty much the only time that camera was ever plugged in. So they did have a security system, but not any cameras.
Just didn't use it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, the main thing that makes it pretty clear that it was not a burglary gone wrong was that both Barry and Honey's wallets were found in the home. And remember how Honey stopped by the bank on her way home on the 13th?
Yeah.
Well, she apparently made a large cash withdrawal because whenever her wallet was located, it had $7,500 cash in it. They said it was likely for tips for their upcoming trip to Florida and some of the end of the year staff bonuses. Aside from the cash, there was plenty more in that house that were valuable and could have been taken. So it seems highly unlikely that it was a burglary.
Yeah.
So word of their murder spreads very quickly. They were extremely wealthy, owned a large and successful company, and they mixed with a lot of very influential people. Even the prime minister at the time, Justin Trudeau, had been to their home whenever they held a fundraiser for him, and he actually even made a comment on this case. So obviously the family knew very quickly that Barry and Honey had passed away, and whenever the real estate agent called Mary immediately called their 4 children to let them know what had just been discovered. By that afternoon, it was all over the national news, and it wasn't long before it was all over the news globally as well. They were the wealthiest murder victims up to this point in history. And on the news, it was something that genuinely seemed to shock people all over the world. So of course, there were tons and tons of media outside of their home, but once officers were able to remove the bodies from the scene, officers addressed the media and they said, quote, "The circumstances of their death appear suspicious and we are treating it that way." He then went on to encourage anyone with any information to contact the Toronto police. Now, despite the statement just a few hours earlier, later that evening, Detective Brandon Price addressed the media again, and he told them that there were no signs of forced entry and that they were not currently going after any suspects. So this was very confusing for everyone who was keeping tabs on the case, because the first officer said the circumstances seemed suspicious, and now this detective has now said they weren't looking for anyone.
just punched myself.
Oh, that probably didn't feel great. You okay?
Yeah, okay. Continue.
So even though it was unclear how the Shermans had died, due to these statements from the police and because of anonymous police sources, it wasn't long before newspapers touted headlines of this being a murder-suicide. This information being leaked to the media and passed on to the public was heavily criticized by the Sherman children, who fired back pretty quickly with their own statement. And that statement was, our parents shared an enthusiasm for life and commitment to their family and community, totally inconsistent with the rumors regrettably circulating in the media as to the circumstances surrounding their deaths. We are shocked and think it's irresponsible that police sources have reportedly advised the media of a theory which neither their family nor friends nor their colleagues believe to be true. We urge the Toronto Police Service to conduct a thorough, intensive, and objective criminal investigation and urge the media to refrain from further reporting as to the cause of these tragic deaths until the investigation is completed. So, the following day, on December 16th, Dr. Michael Pickup performed an autopsy on both of the bodies, and it was determined that both of them had been dead for approximately 36 hours before they were ever discovered. And they had died from ligature compression, so basically they were strangled, and in his opinion, it was with the belts. Our parents, even our siblings, I feel like, but definitely our parents, if they couldn't get in touch with us for over 24 hours, they would have called the cops. There would be no 36-hour period of our family not hearing from one another.
Yeah. I mean, like, it can be 3 hours and I get a phone call. Have you heard from your sister today? Well, when was the last time you talked to her? 5 minutes ago. Well, she's not answering me today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would never happened in our family, but...
She just texted me. She's good. Okay.
The circumstances surrounding their death, however, could not be determined. Dr. Pickup was hesitant to rule this case a homicide because the hyoid bone in the neck that's usually broken in the event of a violent strangulation was still intact in both Barry and Honey. So if that bone is intact, it tends to indicate that the manner of death is a suicide. But both Honey and Barry had abrasions on their neck and their wrist. So finding the marks on their wrists indicated that they were restrained at some point before their deaths. And that tends to indicate that it was a murder.
Yeah.
So Honey's autopsy also noted that she had a fresh injury on her face and that injury left bruising. So that meant that this was inflicted right before her death or shortly after her death. Because of the conflicting findings in the autopsy, they couldn't determine an exact cause of death, and it left them with 3 different options, and those options were 1, a double suicide, 2, a murder-suicide, or 3, a double homicide. So that same day, Denise, the personal trainer, actually called the police because she saw it on the news, and she was one of the last people to see them alive on December 13th.
Yeah.
And whenever she saw it on the news and that they were reporting that it was a murder-suicide, she contacted them to set up a time to be interviewed because basically she went in and told them that there was no way that that was possible. She told them that whenever she saw them on Wednesday morning, they were both in really good moods. And just a little FYI here, even with the police knowing that Denise was one of the last people to see them alive, they didn't fingerprint her. They didn't take any DNA samples. She called them in order to set up an interview. And she wasn't the only person that they did not take fingerprints or DNA samples from or have interviews with.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not even looking. It's like, it's crime.
Yeah, they're not interviewing people. That right there should be at the very minimum what they start out with. So basically, they didn't take either fingerprints or DNA from anyone until about 8 or 9 months after the victims were found. So as you can imagine, there's been tons of criticism on how the investigation was handled and a lot of suggestions of incompetence in this investigation.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind here, guys, that a lot of the investigation details were kept private by the police. And as we've talked about before in other cases, sometimes that is a good way to go about it. It does help to keep certain aspects concealed that they think may help them later on down the line. And really, it's only because of some really amazing journalists, for example, Kevin Donovan, who had a great podcast doing deep dives into this case. If you want to check it out, it's called Billionaire Murders. But because of journalists like him pushing for information, that's really the only reason that any of the information to this investigation has been released. So the lead detective on the case was Sergeant Susan Gomes. And I don't know about y'all, but I find this detail pretty wild. She never even went to the crime scene until after the bodies had been removed. Like, that's definitely not common practice. And truly, there's a lot that you can gain from seeing a crime scene as the crime scene while the bodies are there.
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, of course, you can go back, you can look at pictures that were taken of the scene.
But it's not the same. And
Exactly.
There's some things that you could pick up.
There's a lot of things that you can see in a different way if you actually
Like
get
in the
to
moment
see it.
processing.
But we'll come back to this in just a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So the Sherman children wanted to use every possible resource that was available to them to find the killer or killers responsible for their parents' deaths, especially after the police came out the day that their parents' bodies were discovered and said to the public that they were not looking into any suspects. So they went ahead and they hired a lawyer named Brian Greenspan to start a private investigation team to start looking into the murders of their parents. And together they worked with forensic experts and other investigators to conclude a separate Sherman-funded investigation into their parents' deaths. So the investigation funded by the Sherman children started the day after the bodies were discovered, with Greenspan saying, quote, "I didn't need 1 minute of expertise to know this was a double homicide. The private investigative team canvassed surrounding houses in the area, and they also went and conducted their own interviews with those who knew the family. They also arranged for a second autopsy to be conducted by Dr. David Chasen, and he confirmed what the Sherman children and what many other people who were close to the family already suspected, that this was a double homicide. In his autopsy, he noted that there was evidence that both of their wrists had been bound while they were still alive. Now, this was noted in the original autopsy by Dr. Pickup, but he didn't make a final interpretation of it, so... Dr. Chasen also noted the use of a thin ligature around both of the victims' necks, meaning that they weren't actually strangled by the belts that were found around their necks at the crime scene.
Yeah.
Now, these infamous belts, they actually belonged to Barry. Honey had purchased these belts on sale from Canadian Tire for $9.99 each. And there was a picture of Barry wearing one of these belts for the first time on the day that the couple was murdered. So ultimately, the findings that the second autopsy concluded that someone had strangled Barry and Honey before staging their bodies in the pool room and removing the materials used to restrain and strangle them from the home. So obviously, if you hadn't caught on, they staged it to look as if it was a suicide. But one more thing I want to point out here is that their pool railing that the belts had been looped through to make it look like a suicide was about 4 foot off of the ground. And if you go back and you look through it, it would have been extremely difficult to actually hang yourself this way.
From that, with the height, with the pool, like,
and with their age,
like
with
buoyancy,
Barry's
like
physical
all the different things,
capabilities, all things.
Yeah.
So the markings around their wrist went against the theory of murder-suicide, because if Barry had hung himself after strangling his wife to death, he wouldn't have been able to remove the ligatures that were used to bind his own arms. Not to mention the idea of Barry hanging himself. He was this big player in pharmaceuticals, and they all believed that if he was going to take his own life, he would have just used pills to do it.
Yeah, he would have found some sort of like easier outing.
Yeah, and I mean, he had access to pills every day. It also would have been incredibly difficult for him to hang himself in the way that they were found, because if you recall, neither of the victims were actually found hanging. They were found in a seated position, and the belts were simply holding their bodies in that position to keep their upper halves upright.
Yeah.
So basically, it would have been not only a strange way to hang themselves, but incredibly difficult. So on top of this, many people have strong opinions about Barry and his own physical capabilities to do this. As we've said, he was 75 years old. He was not in great shape. Honey, however, was in great shape. She worked out regularly. She weighed about 170 pounds. So had Barry attacked her, she probably was in good enough shape to, one, fight back, and two, more than likely, she would have had more stamina to outlast Barry in any kind of struggle.
Yeah.
And had he been able to attack and subdue her, it just doesn't seem likely that he would have been able to move her body, because it was suggested that Honey had been killed or subdued in a different part of the home than the part where her body was found.
Yeah.
And the theory behind it is that she was actually attacked in the place where her phone was found, meaning that had Barry been responsible for this, he would have had to drag her all the way across the entire first floor of the home, down the stairs in the basement level, and then into the pool room. So it just would have been a very physical task for someone of his age and physical capabilities.
Well, and then you'll probably get into it shortly, but like the blood, I guess you would just think that like if he was the one, there would have been more blood on him too, you know, 'cause he only had it like on his pant leg.
Right. He would have had marks or something from her fighting back, absolutely.
Yeah.
Many people just did not believe that Barry physically would have been able to complete that task.
Yeah.
Also found in the pool room, there was a blood smear on the pool railing where the belts were looped through the railing, and there were also drag marks leading to Honey's body. So this also strongly suggests that she was attacked, subdued, or murdered in another part of the house, and then her body was simply transported to the pool room.
Yeah.
So in the initial search of the house, there was a home inspection report, which was likely obviously for the sale of their home. They found Barry's black leather driving gloves and his BlackBerry phone on the floor in the basement near where he would have entered the home through the garage. So both of their phones were on different levels of the house, and both were lying on the floor. I mean, if you're going to murder your wife and then kill yourself, are you just going to kind of toss your phone and your keys and whatever else in different areas of the house? Probably not.
No, because a lot of that kind of stuff is well thought out and pre-planned.
Exactly.
So like very organized. I mean, it can happen chaotically and just in the spur of a moment, but like typically it's not.
Yes. So it seems more likely that the phones were found in the locations where each of the Shermans were caught off guard and attacked. And in the event of that attack, their phones were dropped and left wherever they fell. So their funerals were held the following week of December 21st, and over 6,000 people attended. So it was clear that in their lives they had touched many people, and it was clear that their deaths left a massive void in their children's lives. Yeah. The son, Jonathan, said at the funeral that he and his siblings keep expecting them to just walk through the door and that everything would be fine. He went on to say, quote, that if ever a crisis would strike, we always had two people to call for help. One would provide calmness, level-headedness, and perspective, and the other would instantly take charge of the situation. You were like a lock and a key, each pretty useless on your own, but together you unlocked the whole world for yourselves and for us and for so many others. We promise to carry on your legacy of greatness and giving from now until forever. He also went on to announce the Barry and Honey Foundation of Giving, which supports charitable organizations in the hopes of furthering their parents' dreams. He said this foundation was to be run by their aunt, Honey's sister, Mary, and he said, quote, we would like our Aunt Mary to help guide this foundation in a way that best honors our parents. So now let's kind of get into who Barry and Honey were.
Okay.
So Barry, whose full name was Bernard Charles Sherman, was born in Toronto on February 25th, that's Brittany's birthday, of 1942.
Not Brittany's exact birthday.
Not her exact birthday. He was born Jewish and raised alongside his sister Sandra by their parents, Herbert, Dick, and Sarah Sherman. Herbert passed away from a heart attack in 1952 when Barry was just 10 years old.
Oh.
So this obviously was a very hard time for his immediate family at the time. His sister was younger than he was, and his mom was now left alone to raise 2 children, which she did, and she did well. She was able to provide a happy home and a very happy upbringing. So from a very early age, Barry battled with insomnia, which followed him until his death. His friends said that it was because his mind was just always racing. It never shut off. During his school years, he was an average student until his senior year, which is whenever he started taking his studies seriously and started really to shine academically. He was incredibly smart and described as very driven, brilliant, and even a genius. He was extraordinarily intelligent. He was very introverted and guarded and wanted to focus on studying and working. He was obsessively work-driven and could be very blunt and direct if you were not up to his standards. So he was just 16 years old whenever he started attending the University of Toronto Science Engineering program, and he was one of the youngest students to ever join the program. In his final year of high school, he won a national physics contest, and when he graduated from school, his results were actually featured in a local newspaper article because he had scored the highest out of all of the students in Ontario. So during his school years, he spent his summers working for his uncle, Lou Winter, who had a company named Empire Laboratories. This was basically a generic prescription drug distributor, and he also ran a separate company called Winter Laboratories, which basically performed pregnancy tests on urine samples. So Barry started out working for both of these companies. He would go around and pick up the urine samples for pregnancy tests, and he would also go and deliver medications for Empire. And as he got older, his uncle Lou gave him more responsibilities as the company transitioned from a distributor to a manufacturer. In 1964, Barry graduated from the university with the highest honors in his class, and for his thesis, he received the university's Governor General Award. At this point in his life, he told friends that one of his aspirations was to work at NASA. So the summer after he graduated, instead of going back to work for Empire, he went on to work for Spar Aerospace Division of de Havilland Aircraft in Toronto. And when he finished up there, he then went to Boston to begin studying astronautics and aeronautics at MIT. During his second year at MIT, he received a call that his Uncle Lou had passed away very suddenly from an aneurysm. Lou's wife had been battling leukemia and was terminally ill at the time of Lou's death, and actually passed away just 3 weeks after Lou died. That's heartbreaking to lose both of your parents so quickly.
Yeah.
That close
Within
together.
weeks of each other.
Yeah. So together they had 4 children, 7-year-old Tim, 5-year-old Jeffrey, 4-year-old Carrie, and 3-year-old Dana.
Little.
Very, very young children. So it was obviously a really difficult thing for them to lose both of their parents in such a short period of time and to be orphaned at such a young age. After the death of his uncle, Barry actually attempted to buy all of his uncle's assets, including Empire Laboratories, writing that he was, quote, anxious to protect the value of the said assets for the benefit of the children of Lou and Beverly Winter. However, this was rejected, so he returned to his studies at MIT and graduated with a PhD in astrophysics. He had a 5.0 GPA for the entirety of his studies at MIT.
It's crazy.
Super crazy.
Imagine.
So after graduating from MIT, he returned to Toronto and once again tried to buy his late uncle's company with the help of a friend and business partner, Joe Olter. The two of them managed to scrounge up $250,000 because that's so easy. You can just scrounge that up. Yeah. And with this, they were able to present an offer to purchase a majority stake in the company for $450,000, assuming the extra $200,000 was to be paid back over time. So Barry suggested that he should be able to buy and run the company with the condition that the four Winter children would always be able to work there once they turned 21. And under the proposal that each of the Winter children would also be able to buy a 5% stake in the company once they turned 21, and that they would be entitled to royalties of the company's patented products for 15 years. And all of these conditions would be voided if Barry decided to sell the company. So this offer with its conditions was accepted, and it was finalized in August of 1967, which is whenever Barry and Joel took over Empire Laboratories.
That was sweet of him to like ensure that his cousins.
I thought it was very kind.
Like, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And at the time, the generic pharmaceutical industry was in its infancy. So a lot of people still didn't trust generic brands. They didn't trust the legitimacy, and they just felt that they were inferior.
Yeah.
So the company was also having its own problems, both in production and in business. But whenever Barry and Joel took over, their leadership turned the company around and made it a true success. So in 1970, Joel's wife, Cindy, introduced Barry to her friend Honey, and they started dating and got married the next year in 1971. So now we're going to talk about Honey.
All right.
So Honey was born Honey Rich, and she was born in 1947 in an Austrian displacement camp, which provided temporary housing for survivors of the Holocaust. Her parents, Nifuli and Helen, had fled there after being freed from a Nazi work camp in Poland. They eventually immigrated with Honey to Toronto, where they gave birth to their second child, Honey's sister, Mary. Honey went on to enroll at the Ontario College of Education at the University of Toronto, and she was described as generous, warm, outgoing, full of life, and the life of the party. She was said to be high energy, talkative, and engaging, and one friend described her as the heartbeat of the social circle, while a neighbor later said that she was the kind of person that made you feel like a friend within minutes of meeting her.
So total opposite of him.
Total opposite, yes.
Total opposite. All right.
Yep. So both Honey and Barry really wanted a family. Honey especially wanted to have a big family with lots of children. And while they tried to get pregnant many times, unfortunately, Honey suffered many miscarriages. Eventually, though, they were able to have one child, and Honey gave birth to their first daughter, Lauren, in 1975. They did try to have more children, but they were unable to successfully do so. So they had 3 more children using surrogates. Now, Barry was the donor for all of the surrogates, but at this point in time, they did not have the technology necessarily to have him fertilize Honey's eggs. So instead, they used eggs of different surrogates, meaning that all of the children had different mothers, but they all had the same father. So their son, Jonathan, was born in 1983, followed by another daughter, Alexandra, in 1986. And then lastly was their daughter, Kaylin, in 1990. Honey was described as a graceful and resilient woman, despite being the wife of a multi-billionaire. Her friends said that she was humble and economical. In 2015, she was diagnosed with throat cancer, and she insisted on driving herself to and from all of her radiation appointments. And her strength really shined through in her parenting as well. She was said to be a devoted mother who checked in and stayed in touch with her children constantly, whereas Barry was considered to be much more distant. He was completely obsessed with work, and it was a reoccurring issue throughout their relationship. Honey was a socialite, and she loved to travel, but Barry was introverted and a little bit awkward. So he was unable to commit to a lot of the travel because he simply didn't want to go. He wanted to stay and work. So whenever the yeah.
Reminds me of mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. It does. So even whenever the family would go on trips or vacations, say it was a skiing trip.
I bet Barry left early.
Well, Kind of, but no, not exactly. Basically, Honey would take the kids out and ski while Barry stayed in the hotel or resort and worked there.
Yeah.
So eventually, Honey just started taking her sister Mary on all of these trips instead of Barry because he just preferred to stay at home. So Honey and Mary would take the kids on all of these vacations and trips. They went to Miami a lot where they had a condo. They also would go to Disney World a lot, which Honey and Mary considered to be their happy place.
Aww.
Yeah. So naturally through this, the Sherman children grew very, very close to their Aunt Mary. Barry and Honey actually gave her money. And when I say that they gave her money, I mean that they actually fully supported her. They gave her money to purchase properties. They gave her a spending allowance. They paid for her to decorate homes for them. They gave her husband jobs, and they also gave her children money as well. So again, they were very generous to their family and to the people closest to them. Some people even think that sometimes they were maybe a little too generous. Mm. So they were considered to be very frugal whenever it came to themselves, but Barry never hesitated to give his children anything that they ever wanted. He often gave them money anytime they wanted or needed it, much to Honey's displeasure. Honey wanted the kids to find their own way. She wanted them to learn to be independent of their dad and wanted them to be able to make it on their own. Yeah. So in 1972, Barry sold his shares in Empire Laboratories, which, as we know, voided the agreement that allowed his cousins, the Winters children, to get anything from their father's company. So they no longer had jobs, they no longer had the shares or royalties from patented products. Then in 1974, he used the proceeds from that sale, along with his experience and knowledge that he now had in that industry, to found his own generic pharmaceutical company named Apotex. And in 1987, Apotex became the #1 producer of generic pharmaceuticals in Canada. Barry, who we know was a workaholic, maintained tight control of the company. He refused to take it public or sell it to competitors. And at the time of his death, they employed over 11,000 staff members globally.
That's crazy.
It's a big company. They exported drugs to about 115 countries, and they recently reported an annual revenue exceeding 3.9 billion Canadian dollars, which in America would equal roughly around 2.8 billion.
Still a lot of money.
A ton of money. Mm. So their business practice was basically to manufacture a generic version of a brand name drug as quickly, cheaply, and legally as possible before the patent for the brand name drug expired. So whenever a company creates a drug, they have to get a patent on it, meaning that they are the only ones allowed to create that drug. Barry basically took advantage of Canadian laws to find ways around that. So, as I'm sure you can conclude, Big Pharma hated Barry. I mean, they hated him.
Yeah.
Barry and,
Can only imagine.
So Barry and Apotex were often in court with one pissed off drug company or another who had spent lots and lots of time and lots of money developing a drug only to eventually be undercut by Barry and his company. So Barry's character was frequently a topic of discussion in the media throughout his career. As far as pharmaceutical bosses go, the public thought that he was one of the better ones. You know, he brought life-saving medications to the public for lower prices. He was a champion of affordable medication. He was seen as someone who fought corporate greed to reduce health costs. He also donated tens of millions of dollars to different charities and was overall a pretty nice guy to those around him, unless, of course, your work was not up to par, in which case he told you how it was. In the pharmaceutical industry, he was seen as a ruthless competitor, a disruptor of traditional business norms, and sometimes ethically a little shady. One law professor from the University of Ottawa, Amir Atarian, described him as, quote, a deplorable human being. Morton Shulman, a physician, pharmaceutical entrepreneur, and a member of Ontario Parliament, said that Barry was, quote, the only person I have ever met with no redeeming features whatsoever. Yeah. So most of his criticism comes from his business practices paired with claims that he allegedly gouged Canadians with high drug prices. Barry's response to these claims were, if we're thieves, we're Robin Hoods. So he obviously saw nothing wrong with his tactics.
He saw himself as being from the rich to give to the poor.
Yeah, a good guy.
So even if he was some sort of villain, he was a good villain.
Exactly. On top of that, he actually made the bulk of his fortune by suing people. Yeah. He had a strong reputation of being litigious, even described as being the most litigious man in all of Canada. So he loved to sue as many people as he could.
I would love to be his lawyer.
Yeah. He filed as many as 1,200 cases against the Canadian government. Yeah.
Against the government?
The government.
How did they even let him live in this place?
Listen.
Come on, Canada, do better.
So many questions.
First.
Yes. So he had as many as 1,200 cases against the Canadian government and had sued many, many other people as well. Some sources even claim that he had been fighting up to 100 legal battles at a time.
So he has like 10 lawyers, not just one.
He's got multiple. Yeah. Most of these legal battles were challenging drug patents. Now, one of his closest friends and business associates, Frank D'Angelo, described him by saying, quote, "You hit Barry Sherman with a fly swatter, he comes after you with a sledgehammer." So, despite the backlash that he received in his 50-year career, in the weeks before his murder, he actually found out that he was going to be appointed to the Order of Canada, which is a national honor system that recognizes outstanding achievement, dedication to the community, and service to the nation.
Maybe that's why Canada let him sue him.
Right?
1,200 times.
At least 1,200. This is not an exact number, but it's pretty close.
Wow.
Yeah.
They probably figured at this point, maybe we can keep him under wraps if we let him be part of our side.
At least get donations from him, you know? It's crazy.
Get some of that money back.
Yeah. While he was alive, he described the target that drug name companies put on his back by saying, quote, "They hate us. They have private investigators on us all the time trying to investigate." The thought once came to my mind, why didn't they just hire someone to knock me off? And in the wake of he and Honey's murders, it was definitely a thought that crossed many people's minds. Had a brand name drug company had enough? Had they hired someone to kill him? Was Honey just collateral damage of all of this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. It's not that unheard of nowadays. There's been multiple executions and
Assassinations.
murders and assassinations, all related to pharma.
Yep. And that's exactly what draws so much attention for me.
But this is like an early indication of these things happening. It could have been. Anyways, all that being said, this is where we're gonna leave you.
That's right.
We hope that no matter how you celebrate, what you celebrate, whether it be Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever, we hope that you all have a very merry, bright, and safe holiday season.
That's right.
Until next time,
I'm Ryan.
and I'm Taylor. And remember, it's not just crime,
It's
pure
Malice.
malice. Woo woo!